about why this is so important to us and for LGBTQ Missouri. All right, Sean, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Karis. My pronouns are he, him. It is so very good to be talking with you all at Promo. It's been fun to work with Promo over the years. Before I was doing Clean Missouri stuff, I worked with Promo as part of Progress Missouri and other adventures. So we are so very close to defeating Amendment 3. And so I am excited here to talk about just what's going on in the fine print, why it is so nasty, and why it is so important for us to defeat Amendment 3. So, I mean, we know, I think most of us know why we're here, generally speaking, right? So voters passed a good thing back in 2018, and politicians in Jefferson City got to work really quickly after voters passed that to try and undo what voters had done. But what I think everyone needs to know, and what's really important, is that the proposal in Amendment 3 is not to go back to the system that existed in 2011 or 2001 before voters passed the reform. It is truly radical. And in new ways, it is a different system than what we've had in Missouri in the past, and it's unlike any other system in the country in some really significant and radical ways. So the politicians behind Amendment 3 know that you aren't going to like what's in the fine print, and so they're just trying to distract you. Their trick, the sum total of their trick, is a $5 change to lobbyist gift limits and a $100 change to contribution limits for state Senate candidates. No one thinks those are real reforms. Those are a smokescreen, and frankly, they're a tell that let everyone know that what Amendment 3 is really about is about redistricting, and it's about gerrymandering in brand new ways for Missouri. Two courts have ruled now that what the politicians behind Amendment 3 tried to appear on the ballot broke the law with their dishonesty. There's a few quotes from one of the court rulings. What you're going to see on the ballot is still going to be a little complicated and confusing. And so I'm excited about this opportunity to talk that through so you know what you're going to see. The first two bullets on the ballot summary are going to be about this $5 change and this $100 change. They are hoping then you don't read past there. I'm going to get into a little bit of the details, but what's really going on is what's in that third bullet. The ultimate goal of Amendment 3 is to allow lobbyists and political operatives to be able to draw maps in back rooms to protect their favorite politicians, to create incumbent protection districts where we as voters can't hold our legislators accountable. To get there, to do that, they've got a lot of ways that they are tinkering with the fine print and doing some brand new bad things, but those add up to the ultimate goal, which is a politician protection scheme. The other thing that you're going to see in the ballot summary is, in the tail end, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, that local individual governments expect significant revenue losses if Amendment 3 passes because of the way it seeks to undercount our communities, to undercount our families, our neighborhoods, and things like that. So I'm going to walk through the fine print right now, the things that the politicians behind Amendment 3 don't want you to know. So in a gerrymandering plan, it has a lot of the things that you might expect. It contemplates a more partisan system that we've ever had. It wants the maps to be drawn in back rooms. It has no rules that allow communities to be carved up. It weakens protections, particularly for communities of color. It weakens the legal protections for voters of communities of color. It also guts the rules requiring fair maps and encouraging competitive districts. It then gives the map drawers new loopholes that they've never had before to protect their favorite politicians and partisan interests. Those are the things you might expect. Then there's some brand new bad things that have never been a part of the rules in Missouri and aren't in any of the rules anywhere else in the United States. One, they want to make Missouri the first state to not count everyone in our maps. Missouri has counted everyone since the 1800s, all 6.1 million of us. We're all counted and we're all represented in our maps. That's important, and I'll explain just why it's so important here in a second. They want to add a new formula to the Constitution that would allow the most extreme gerrymander in the entire United States. They want to have a rule that allows a gerrymander more extreme than any other state legislative plan has been since the Deep South in the 1970s. And then they want to put new barriers to stop Missourians from being able to fix rigged maps in court. They would make it so that a judge can't even throw out a redistricting plan, even if the judge knows and has ruled that it violates the law. So for all of these reasons, for any of these reasons, we should vote no. But we've got a real grab bag of bad things here that make it so politicians don't have to listen to us and make it harder to move policies forward that work for everyone. So here's one big, huge, monstrous change to how redistricting would work. Amendment 3 is designed to have maps drawn based on the eligible voter population of Missouri, not of the total population. Every state in America counts everyone right now. This is what Missouri has been doing for at least 145 years, since at least the state constitution of 1875. There's a reason we count everyone, and that's so that all of our families, all of our communities, all of our neighborhoods are fully represented, so that we are fully represented in the state capitol. The sponsor of Amendment 3 has been explicit that they want to draw maps with how they're tinkering with the language to cut kids and to cut non-citizen immigrants out of the population when it comes time to draw maps. This would mean that 1.5 million Missourians, almost all of them kids, just because of who lives in Missouri, almost all of the lost representation would be for families with children. This has been a project of some national gerrymandering folks for a few years. Thomas Hoffeller, who some of you may have read about or heard about in past years, he wrote a memo about what would happen if you draw maps in this way a couple years ago. And he said, if this happens, it would be advantageous to non-Hispanic whites. Those are his words, and he was the proponent of this. In Missouri, the data matches that analysis. So Hoffeller did his work, I think, for Texas. The data here in Missouri matches that. And that's because communities of color are relatively younger than their white counterparts. The deal on the table, what they are proposing essentially, is to not count 1 in 5 white Missourians, and then not count 1 in 4 Black Missourians, and then not count half of the Latino and Asian American populations in the state. This is very bad. It would be bad all by itself. It's extra bad because it's discriminatory in its impact. If this happens, if our neighborhoods are not fully counted, if our communities are not fully counted, our towns and our communities lose. The research backs up common sense that says if your community isn't fully counted, that leads to a loss in revenue and a loss in resources for your town or for your city. And so that's why you'll see in the fiscal note for Amendment 3 that individual governments expect significant revenue losses if Amendment 3 passes. Also, I'm going to go through a couple other pieces, and then we can kick it back to Karis and open it up for questions that folks may have. But one of the formulas in Amendment 3, there are a couple of formulas that are in there. One of them would actually allow the most extreme gerrymander in the United States. You can measure, you can quantify bias in maps. The current law, what voters approved, essentially says do the best you can. You need to have as little bias as possible in the overall plan. The math in our Constitution right now with the rules that voter approved does not prescribe like, hey, here's the makeup you got to have of different districts. But what it does say is the overall plan for the entire state has to be fair as is practicable. What they want to do is flip that on its head and say, here's how bad you can rig the system. And how bad they want to rig the system is gerrymandering that is more extreme, mathematically speaking, than any other map plan in the United States right now for state legislative districts, and more gerrymandered than any plan has been since Mississippi in 1979. And that is just as bad as it sounds. Finally, the brand new way where Amendment 3 would be unlike anything else in the United States is they want to use our state constitution. They want to add new language to our constitution that makes it so you can't unrig maps in court. So that they want it so that the politicians, the operatives, draw the maps in back rooms. They draw incumbent protection plans, and then they want to make it so that even after they've rigged those parts of the process, they want to make it so you can't do anything about it on the tail end. So they want to make it harder to sue, to limit who has even standing to bring a case, and then they want to make it so a judge can't even throw out the full plan, even if the judge rules that it's unconstitutional or breaks the law. And that's why, frankly, why we've got a bigger coalition in 2020 to defeat this thing than we had in 2018. It's the combination of the very clear mandate from voters, and it's then the radical details that allow us to pull together Republicans, independents, Democrats, business groups, advocacy groups, reformers, everyone all together to say, no matter what you thought of 2018, like this thing and what they're trying to do in Amendment 3 is so very, very bad. And we are so gratified and excited to be a part of the big coalition that's working to defeat this thing. With that, Karis, I'm happy to go into any sort of details and fine print that folks might want, but I see that there's questions already coming in, and we might just go from there and answer what folks have.
Yeah, I think we'll jump into some questions. I know I have my questions of my own as well, but the first question that has come in, which is actually a question that I've received from volunteers who've been making phone calls to talk to voters about why they need to vote no on Amendment 3. And this question is there any polling that tells us where voters might be thinking on this right now?
Yeah, so the polling we've seen over a number of surveys that voters have got a lot of questions about what are these three things all doing together. But it is on us to make sure that we are running programs and running the campaign and talking to voters to make them understand how voters are trying to trick them. And once voters understand that the politicians behind this thing think that they can trick you with a $5 gift change, like that's how we move folks from the, yeah, I don't know about this, to the heck no side of things. And so we feel really good about where we're at. We've run an aggressive statewide campaign, talking to anyone who will listen, and we feel really good about that. But it's really on us in these final weeks to make sure that we're communicating aggressively, because that's how we move people from the don't know to the heck no.
Definitely. I am with you on that one based on conversations I've had with voters, based on like conversations our volunteers have had with voters. I'm going to let questions continue to kind of pour in. So as you all have questions about Amendment 3, please ask. Something that, I have is, as you know, we had a rough legislative session. Anytime we talk about, this election, we've referred back to the legislative session that we've had as LGBTQ Missourians and how we had more anti-LGBTQ bills than any other state in the country and in the history of Missouri really move forward. And something that's really important for a lot of pro-equality voters right now is making sure that they have the opportunity to vote for pro-equality candidates so they can be fairly represented if they've had representative or state senator in the past who filed one of those horrible pieces of legislation. And I would like for you, if you can answer a little bit about what this means for us being able to accomplish that in the future in competitive districts, so LGBTQ Missourians have a chance to feel represented in the future.
Yeah, so redistricting for the last couple of decades in Missouri has really been defined by backroom deals or maps drawn in secret. So whether that's through the commissions, there's also been like not very transparent ways that they get drawn by judicial panels. And then the outcome, what voters see on the tail end, they don't really see how all those maps got drawn or what went into what guided those decisions. But what they do see are non-competitive elections in November. And if you just look at the math, about half of the House and Senate campaigns over the last decade have not had any sort of major party competition. It's either a super Democratic or a super Republican seat, even for the ones where there are two major party candidates, almost all of the time, you know who's going to win based on how the maps are drawn, and like when filing closes, that hey, this person's probably going to win because this was drawn to protect an incumbent or protect one party or the other. And so what voter approved reforms did is they increased the number of competitive seats that we're going to have in 2021. It doesn't mean that every district is going to be 50-50. That would violate the law, and it'd be impractical to do anyway. But there's a really great analysis done by the Princeton Gerrymandering Project, where they looked through all the math of voter approved reforms. And what they found was that about 20% of the seats in Missouri after maps are drawn in 2021 are going to be competitive, which is way more than we have right now. The rest are going to lean Democratic, lean Republican. This can all be done without crazy shapes, but you know that the overall outcome is more responsive and reflective of the electorate at whole. And so what that means for all of us is that when we know we're on the right side of an issue, and we know that we need policy to move forward, or we need like regressive policy to stop dead in its tracks, that when we have a legislature that is responsive to the people back home, then you're going to get better outcomes over time. Amendment 3 seeks to make things way worse than they've ever been in terms of incumbent protection. And so whatever we're working on, whether that's pro-equality legislation or stopping anti-trans bills or like whatever it is, like if they're picking on kids, I can guarantee you that politicians who are picking on kids are not worried about a November electorate back home. They know that they are in a district where they just have to worry about a few big donors and a primary electorate. And so I think for a whole lot of reasons, it is important for us to have a legislature that is responsive to the people. And so, yeah, that's a long way of saying we need more competition, and we need voters to be able to hold their politicians accountable.
Definitely. And I think the over 100 Missourians who went to the Capitol this year to testify against, harmful legislation, specifically, you named it and I didn't, but specifically so many pieces of legislation that did target transgender youth. I think that we could all agree that having legislators who are responsive to their constituents is vital. And constituents to being able to have some power in that is really vital. Being able to move forward for, like you said, whatever legislation we care about when we're looking at pro-equality legislation and any other legislation that we care about as Missourians. That's absolutely vital and important to us. I also had a question, we were talking about children and immigrants, correct? Being cut out of being counted for these maps. Does that then also mean that they're not counted once they are eligible to vote?
So my eldest son is upstairs eating dinner right now. And so if Amendment 3 passes and it's fully implemented as the sponsor has made clear is the goal of Amendment 3, Judah would not count in the plans that are drawn next year, but he would vote in those. He would vote in a couple cycles for a senator and a representative in districts where he doesn't count and where he's not represented. That is just like one part of like all the reasons why this is like an unfair and ridiculous idea. There is a reason that no other state in the United States does this. Counting everyone is a core feature of any sort of fair map plan. And I think it's notable that, I'll just leave it at that. Like it's bad on its face. It undercounts our families and undercounts our communities.
And I know that there are so many things to get into with Amendment 3 and it's so long, but I think I highlight that because so much of our young people are starting to feel safer and more affirmed to come out. And so we have more and more young voters who are LGBTQ in our state. And this tells me that many of them aren't represented in their maps once they vote. And that's a deep concern. That's a deep concern for LGBTQ Missourians, and that's a deep concern for all Missourians. And I also know that once we start having discussions about who deserves and who doesn't deserve to be counted, we have a real issue about respecting our fellow Missourian, about respecting our fellow human. And that's never anything that is okay with us or should be okay with us as neighbors to each other.
Yeah, it's really simple. Like everybody matters. Everybody should count. The way that we do that is to continue the practice that Missouri has done, frankly, for 145 years. There is a reason why that's enshrined in our Constitution and that it's the law. So this, among many reasons, there are why we should be rejecting Amendment 3.
I agree with you. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things for folks who are really excited, who it seems like folks are incredibly excited to help us make sure that Missouri votes no on Amendment 3 on November 3rd, if not before November 3rd, if you're getting your ballots in. So I want to talk a little bit about how to get involved. There are several different ways that people can get involved. The first one is you can go to cleanmissouri.org, correct? You all are doing a lot of hard work. Go to cleanmissouri.org. There are many ways to get involved. At Promo, we have several ways to get involved as well. So this Sunday is actually the last of our promo-specific phone banks to call LGBTQ and ally voters about voting no on Amendment 3. It's absolutely important that we talk to LGBTQ and ally voters specifically because LGBTQ voters are some of the least empowered voting bloc of our voters. And we just need to make sure that we can empower each other. We can empower each other to create the change that we want to see in this world. And we can empower each other to make sure that we count and that we have fair maps and fair representation. And so that is what we're doing this Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. We'll drop a link that you can sign up and join us so then we can talk to our fellow pro-equality voters about why they need to vote no on Amendment 3. We also are going to be joining up with several other advocacy organizations, our friends at the Sierra Club, Missouri Healthcare Action, and Planned Parenthood, Organization for Black Struggle. We're all going to be towards GOTV time from October 24th to November 3rd. We're going to be making phone calls about voting no on Amendment 3. And we're all going to be doing it together because we understand that there are so many issues that we all care about, so many identities that we all hold, and we all share the same goal of defeating Amendment 3. So those are some opportunities to get involved. We'll also have some text banks coming up to get out the vote as well here at Promo. So keep a lookout on that. We have everything located on our 2020 Voter Hub. If you go to promoonline.org, our 2020 Voter Hub is right there. Not only is it going to give you your deadlines to how to vote, in case you want to vote by mail, if you need to vote absentee, or you plan on voting in person, we have all the deadlines that you need. And we have a really easy graphic as well. And then we have all the events that we have going on, all the ways to get involved, all the ways to get plugged in. So then we make sure that we vote for equality and that we can push forward change in the state and the change that we want to see. So those are all of the ways that you can get involved with us. I know I just briefly glossed over. You can go to cleanmissouri.org. What else can people find over at cleanmissouri.org, Sean?
Yes, you can find other resources for having online conversations as well. And just to echo one thing or really reinforce a thing that Kara said, these conversations about fair maps, about democracy that works for all of us, like they are some of the most easy conversations to have as you're talking with voters. One of the last couple of years have been ridiculous in a lot of the ways, but working as part of this coalition has been really gratifying in that so many of like the partisan and nasty divides that we've seen like break down when it comes to what should government look like and how should government work. And so there has been bipartisan opposition to these gerrymandering plans in Jefferson City. We saw that in the House and the Senate. There is definitely bipartisan, transpartisan opposition to these gerrymandering plans with voters. And so I was just, sometimes it's scary to like jump in and go be a part of phone banking or text banking, but these are easy and straightforward conversations to have when voters understand how the politicians behind Amendment 3 are trying to trick them, and that the ultimate goal of this is politician protection plans. Like voters go, oh, I get it. Yeah, Amendment 3. No, thanks. Like, thanks for letting me know, and thanks for helping me understand how these folks are trying to dupe me.
I think I might use that now. I don't think in our script we specifically have politician protection plan, and I think I'm going to use that, Sean, if that's okay, because that's a really great, concise way to put it together. And I agree with you. I mean, there are people of all parties who really see this for what it is. And that you're right, a politician protection plan. It's a gerrymandering scheme, and it is here to hurt us as voters. And so I think this is indeed one of the easiest conversations to have. And this is a way for us to build bridges with folks that maybe we haven't been able to build bridges with before, because we can all see how dangerous this is. So yeah, I love having these conversations. We've been having these conversations at Promo with our volunteers. Our volunteers, we have over 25 volunteers who've been making phone calls. They've made over 5,000 calls. They've talked to hundreds of people. And we are just so excited to continue to push that forward and talk to more and more Missouri voters. And I look forward to folks who are joining us this evening and signing up to join us on Sunday, signing up to join us for centralized GOTV with our partner organizations from October 24th to November 3rd, and checking out Clean Missouri so they can get involved with you all as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Karis. Thank you to everyone in the Promo family for all the work that you've done. You were a big part of the win for bipartisan or for nonpartisan maps for fair maps in 2018. And we know that you will be a part of the win here to defeat this nasty gerrymandering plan to deliver a second mandate for fair maps in 2020.
We're excited to do it. Thanks for doing it with us, Sean.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.